Okay, what did you want to talk about?
Is Jesse Ridgway the YouTuber whose girlfriend or wife had an abortion?
Yes.
I kind of feel bad for him for some reason, that they're in this situation that I'm not sure everything, but I've watched some of what's gone on with him. And if I was him, I wouldn't have told anybody, but I admire him for actually talking about it because that is their choice to be able to do it, their freedom of choice. And so I support their being outspoken about what took place, and I don't feel anything against him at all because he's had some tough times, like a lot of YouTubers have, and he's lost a lot of friends, and um, everybody's losing views, so most YouTubers are kind of in the same boat, and so. I mean, it's kind of a responsible decision to make when they know that they can't take care of a child.
I mean, I don't think any of that is justification to have an abortion just because the child might have Down syndrome. Let me ask you a question. Would the child be worth more if they found out that the child did not have or would not have Down syndrome?
No, I think that maybe they used the excuse that it might have Down syndrome for as to make it sound better than that they just couldn't afford to have a baby. I mean, a lot of people might do that and say that they found out that their baby was going to have a birth defect. So it's easier to feel like that you can have an abortion for a baby with a birth defect than it would be for just to have an abortion of a regular baby because you can't afford it. So either way, people are going to really get um, hammered hard.
Wait,
And
but poor people have children with Down syndrome.
true, that's true. I mean, I had a baby myself a long time ago, and had a birth defect. It was fatal, and it died not long after birth.
Okay. I'm sorry for your loss, but I mean, Down syndrome isn't fatal.
Well, the child does need full-time care, and that's either from the parents or from an institution. And so right now the United States is discouraging institutions for the parents. So therefore the parents are sentenced to a lifelong taking care of a child for the rest of their life that has a birth defect. So the child has no future. So this means that it's a parental burden for the rest of their life to take care of a baby. And it's like I actually support what he did because the thing is they're not doing institutions anymore.
I disagree that the child has no future. I'm going to give you a list of successful people with Down syndrome real quick. Madeline Stewart, international fashion model. Lauren Potter played Becky Jackson on the TV show Glee. Jamie Brewer, known for roles in American Horror Story and for becoming the first woman with Down syndrome to walk the runway at New York Fashion Week. Tim Harris opened and operated a successful restaurant and became well known for his advocacy and public speaking. So saying that just because the child has Down syndrome that they'll have no future is
The, these are
pretty
gig
wrong.
economy jobs, and they're dead end and they don't have a future.
Being
And you
Wait,
also
say
point
that.
out
Hold
that
on, hold on, hold on. Say that again.
these are gig economy jobs. They're temporary jobs.
Be,
So
being an
so
actor
yes, they're
is a dead end job.
yes, for most people it is. Yes, they're one hit. They can be one hit wonders. It's just like people on YouTube. We're less than people on YouTube and on the internet are less than Hollywood celebrities. So everybody thought that the internet was going to be the future, but they put all their investments into Hollywood and Wall Street, and just completely excluded people on the internet who were content creators. And then they went towards influencing, putting their money into investing into influencers instead of content creators who were creating content that had something of value to people, and we were just creating our own culture. And so people on YouTube are pissed. And you know what happens? People on YouTube who are pissed comes to TikTok and says, "Well, we're going to fuck things up on TikTok, and we're going to fuck things up on every consistent app that comes along because we don't give a flying fuck anymore." And so
Okay,
so
I'm gonna stop you right here because you're saying a lot of stuff. It is absolutely not true that being a social media influencer or a YouTuber means that you are less than an actor. How many people do you think know who Steve Carell is?
I don't. I have no idea who he is.
But do you know who Mr. Beast is?
Oh, absolutely. I know who Mr. Beast is.
Do you know who PewDiePie is?
Unfortunately, yes. He's the death of YouTube
Do you
because he works for
right,
Disney.
right. Do you know who Logan Paul is?
I've heard the name before, but I don't know who he is. No, I've not paid attention to him.
Do you know who Andrew Tate is?
I've heard of his name, but I've not watched him. Do you know who Ray William Johnson is?
No, but think about this.
He's an
No,
original
listen,
YouTuber.
listen. Steve Carell played Michael Scott on the American version of The Office. And you don't know who he is,
No.
but you know who Mr. Beast, PewDiePie, I every single name that I gave you, you recognized for YouTubers or social media influencers.
I only heard the
So
names.
so you're
I've only heard of the names, but
right,
you know,
but
but the thing is,
you've never heard of Steve Carell, which is exactly my point. Steve Carell is an A-list actor, 40-year-old virgin, the Anchorman, Legend of Ron Burgundy. What else was he in? Beautiful Boy is
well,
another
I
one.
know of YouTubers because I've been on YouTube since the beginning of YouTube.
Right, but Steve Carell has been an actor since the 90s.
But I don't know who all actors are, though.
Do you know who Chris Evans is?
No,
Do you know who Mark Ruffalo is?
no.
Mark Ruffalo and Chris Evans were in the fucking Avengers.
Oh, I don't watch movies.
One,
I've not been
but
interested in movies for a long
this
time.
is my point. You made the claim that people who operate on social media are less than people who are in mainstream culture outside of social
Well,
media.
what I mean is they have audiences, but the investors are not there, which means that people aren't getting the money. So the money's in Hollywood and them doing Netflix and whatever it is they're doing because that's how they have it set up. They also have it set up with AI as well. So Hollywood set up some AI or had some backdoor deal for them, and that's why they're living in those mansions.
Yeah, I don't think that's really relevant here. And another thing that you said is that the child that might have had Down syndrome, because there have been cases where doctors have told parents that their unborn child might have Down syndrome, and then when the child was born, it turns out that they didn't have Down syndrome. So the child that may have had Down syndrome, because their parents, because their father is a YouTuber, that doesn't mean that the child is going to be a YouTuber. That child can still go on to hold many of these careers, and one of these you said is a dead end job. The last example of a successful person with Down syndrome that I gave you is somebody who owned and operated a restaurant. How is that a dead end job?
Because most restaurants go out of business. It just takes one missed payment or one road change, and then the restaurant or the franchise business, I mean, because goes out of business. And so if people aren't interested in it anymore, that's a dead end job.
Okay, give me an example of a job that's not a dead end job.
One that is not met with inflation potentially, but
Can you give
being
me? Okay.
being a housewife is a dead end job actually because women are not, are unpaid. And so there's this problem with inflation that we're having taking place right now.
Okay, so if the child with Down syndrome was a girl and she became a housewife, you would think that it would be wrong. If you could guarantee that the child would be a girl and would become a housewife, you would then agree that it's wrong to kill that child.
No, I would actually advise someone who has a traumatic brain injured child to have them sterilized so they can't have kids.
Okay, can you give me an example of a dead end job where you actually earn an income yourself? Or a job that is not a dead end job where you actually earn an income?
All of them that are by a corporation right now, the corporations are cutting back. So if you can do self-employment, and you're not met with inflation, then then it might not be a dead end job. But the way things are right now with inflation, everything is a dead end
Can you
job.
can you please move away from the dog cuz or something? Um so any job that is where the employee is under some kind of corporation is a dead end job.
Well, it's not a guarantee. Part-time jobs are not something where you can even buy a house. So if you can't buy a house and sustain your life to that of equality, then what good is even going to work? What good is even getting any money? Because if you can't buy a house, you can't pay for rent, then what good is it?
Okay, I have a question. Would you say that by the standard that you gave for dead end jobs, would you say that being a lawyer is a dead end job?
For yes, for some people, yes.
But in general.
Yes. Being a lawyer would be because of the fact that the government lawyers are not going to be paid as much as corporate lawyers. So a government lawyer can easily be a dead end job, yes.
No,
And
I'm saying if you work for a private law firm that is not your own, like if you're a partner but it's not your law firm,
it can easily be a dead end job, yes.
just because the law firm might go under,
Yes.
that's insane. You know that, right?
No, because there's separate types of law firms, and I mean, you have Hollywood law firms. They're different from a separate private law firm, and I believe that a lot of people who are in the military might get out of the military. They might have been JAG possibly, or maybe just they passed the bar somehow and figured out how to go into law. Just because they're a lawyer doesn't mean they're rich.
Okay, so if somebody works at a company and they're like really good employee and they're projected to get promoted 4 times in the next 10 years, would you say that they're currently working a dead end job?
They're gonna have to keep up with inflation, and so so this is the one of the things though with women who when they get divorced and they get alimony, the alimony is stuck is stuck. It's just stuck at a stagnant place where it doesn't keep up with inflation, and that's the same thing with Social Security. That's the same thing with welfare. None of it keeps up with inflation.
Okay, I think we've spent enough time on this. This is a summarized definition of a dead end job. I don't know how you formed your definition that you gave, but a dead end job is a job that offers little or no opportunity for advancement, increased responsibility, higher pay, or skill development. So I don't know where you get the idea that because the corporation or organization might go under, because like would you say that it's okay to get an abortion because the child might pass away in a car accident at the age of 25?
No, I wouldn't say that. But look, I have another question for you. Would you say it's okay to not have an abortion, but then go to war where the child dies in war?
Well, is it the
Under,
child's choice to do that?
Under the Second Amendment, of course it is. It becomes the parents were forced to have the child, and then it goes to war because of the draft. Yes, it's forced to. A lot of Vietnam era veterans died because they were forced to go to war after their mothers probably didn't have abortions, and then they died because they went to war.
Wait, I'm confused. You have a problem with the draft?
Um, yes, because you're forcing people to go to war to die for their country, to die for something that they may not want to go to war for, but they need a job.
Well, guess
They need a
what?
job, and the
Guess
military
what?
is the only job.
Guess what? A child with Down syndrome can't join the military and can't be drafted.
And you know what? Someone over the age of 42 can't join the military and be drafted either.
That's not true.
Oh, yes, it is.
No, it's
Over
actually
the age
not.
of 42. Yes, the military discriminates over the age of 42.
Nope. If
No.
you have prior service, I'm pretty sure the upper limit is higher than
Well, right,
42.
that's for prior service, but for people who just need a job over the age of 42, they can't join.
Well, sure, and I think there's valid reasons for that.
What are the valid reasons? Well, then a person with Down syndrome should be able to join because otherwise the military is discriminating someone with disabilities. I mean, they take people with no limbs. They've accepted people with no limbs and their own soldiers. They've accepted them back into the military,
Wait,
and they're
wait, wait.
they're the
You
same as
said
Down syndrome.
you said no limbs, meaning they're a quadruple amputee.
Well, they're missing limbs. They might be missing both legs and their arm. There could be. I don't know if there's any quadruple amputees, but I know the military has taken their soldiers back in and allowed them to stay because of what happened. Because they're the only insurance company they have that will insure them from job duties because the other private sector insurance companies will not take on that responsibility.
Well, you said because you said people over the age of 42 can't join, and then you said people they allow people to join if they have or if they're missing a limb.
No,
So,
I said they take their veterans, their own veterans, they let them stay in, so they're taken care of. So they go above and beyond with veterans who've been to war and they've been active duty and they've lost limbs or had something catastrophic happen so that they are taken care of because no insurance company can ever keep up and is willing to take on the cost and price of what it takes to take care of a veteran. So the
wait,
military will
so you
take care
think
of their
you
soldiers.
you think that
And they
people
should.
you think that people over the age of 42 and people with Down syndrome should be allowed to join the military?
Yes. Senior citizens should be able to join the military, yes.
What's your justification for allowing people with Down syndrome to join the military?
Equality. Otherwise it discriminates the person with Down syndrome. So let's use Jesse. He's a really good example. So if he wants his child, so if you would have had his child, he wants his child to have a life. So that would be maybe joining the military if his child wants to join the military. Otherwise, right now, people with Down syndrome have no future. They have no way to take care of themselves, even though they may be able to. And I do agree with you. There was another one, Corey, on a show. This was an old guy. He might be
Okay,
in his
okay.
70s now.
Just let me ask you a question. Do you think that somebody with Down syndrome should be allowed to be the president of the United States?
Yes, absolutely. If a person in a wheelchair can be the president of the United States, well, let's use Governor Abbott, for example. He's in a wheelchair, correct? And I believe, was it Grover Cleveland, maybe? Another president was in a wheelchair
So
when he.
you think there's no distinction between somebody with a physical disability and somebody with a mental disability?
Well, you gave the point that a Down syndrome person can have kids and is able to take care of themselves, which some can, some can't.
I never
Some,
said that Down syndrome people can take care of themselves. I just want to be clear. I never said that.
and so, yes, someone who has a mental disability should be able. be able to be president of the United States. So, for example, if we see there's going to be soldiers who would be perfectly capable of being president of the United States who have traumatic brain injuries, but they
Okay,
can't speak
but
as well as what they used to be able to because they went to war. But they'd be perfectly capable of running the country.
you think a person with Down syndrome would be able to navigate like foreign policy, trade deals, things like that?
Let me ask you this for the sake
No,
of
can you
equality.
can you just answer my question?
I, some can, some might be able to, some might not be able to. Can a teenager who's 18 years old navigate all of that?
Well, no, you have to be at least 35 to be the president of the United States.
But yet we have 16-year-olds who can join the military and
No.
defend their
You
country. And
cannot you cannot join the military at 16 years of age.
well, then is it 17? I know it's really young.
Yes,
At one
but
time,
there's a difference between
delayed entry.
no, hold on. There's a difference between allowing a 17-year-old to join and be a PV1, which is a private, which is the lowest enlisted rank, where literally all you are responsible for is putting on your uniform and showing up to work.
But he would have
There's
to
a
go
dip
to war.
there's a
Or
difference. Yes, but he's not going to serve in any kind of leadership position unless he's the only person left. And there is a difference between that and being the president of the United States. Do you understand that there's a difference between those two things?
yes, but there's some 17-year-olds and teenagers who think that they could be president of the United States right out the
Well,
gate.
they're delusional.
They have aspirations.
Anybody can have aspirations. I have aspirations of being a quadrillionaire.
Well, I do too. I think that would be great. That's entirely too much money, but maybe about 100 million would be nice for me.
Does that mean that all aspirations are reasonable though? Just because you have them, does that make them reasonable?
Yes, I don't want to squash their aspirations if they think they can be president at 17 and that's what they want to think about. I want them to dream about it and be able to
Wait,
move
wait,
forward
wait.
with
Do you think it would be reasonable for somebody to have the aspiration of being the only human being alive on Earth?
No, I that would be pretty lonely and
But is it
it
is it reasonable? Because
no.
you said you don't want to quash anyone's dreams. So if a person all they think about is being the last human being left on Earth, you said you don't want to quash anyone's dreams. So you can't quash that one.
If somebody has that dream and they want to be the one last person left on Earth, then if that's their dream, then they can dream about that, right?
But do you think
Well,
it's reasonable?
sure, it's reasonable if they want to think that. That's their mind to be able to think that.
No. Do you think that that is a reasonable aspiration?
If someone wants to think that, yes, it's not
Can
my place to actually
can
dissuade them
can
to
you
think
just
that.
answer the question and not add qualifiers?
It's reasonable for someone to think that, yes.
No. Is the aspiration itself reasonable? Not is it reasonable for the person to think that? Is the aspiration itself reasonable?
It sounds reasonable for whatever reasons they have in their brain. I did add some qualifiers to it, but it sounds strange, but maybe somebody thinks that, or they think it for the purposes of a movie.
But in reality, having the aspiration in reality of being the only person left alive on planet Earth. Not do they think that it's you know what, I'm not even going to bother asking this question again. I feel like you're just going to add more qualifiers. Um okay, so back to the topic at hand. Why is it okay for somebody to get an abortion when they believe that their child has Down syndrome? You said that you said this that they have no future. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is, per our discussion, is that there's varying degrees of Down syndrome where some people need assistance, other people may not need as much assistance. A lot of them may need guided care throughout their whole life. They'll need adult care, possibly, most likely, which means that that's very, very expensive, and that's a burden placed upon the parents. So it's a very hard decision for someone to make. It's a very hard decision, and when people talk about it in public, people come down on them critically and harshly. And I know I've been met with that talking about my deceased baby over the decades on the internet.
Okay, do you think that it would be okay to unalive every single person on Earth that has an IQ of less than 60?
No.
Why not? They have no future. They're operating with a
But
mental deficit.
they're already here.
Okay, but why does geography determine value?
Because we have different values placed on human beings around the world because of inflation. So other countries can't start. Other countries function with no money. Some countries function because of capitalism and greed based on money, and plus they place a value on human beings.
Wait, Rich Mahog actually makes a good point. You say that a person with Down syndrome likely has no future, yet you say they would be fit to be president.
I have to.
Just for equality's sake.
Correct.
Should we let somebody who's in a coma be the president of the United States?
No, that's a disqualifier. No.
That's you're being bigoted right now.
How is that bigoted?
You said for equality.
Well, but see, under the 20, I think, isn't it the 25th Amendment where they said that if the president was to be in a coma, that the vice president would take over, or something like that. One of those where they said that when they have surgery, even the vice president takes over when they're put under, or something like that.
Do you think a foreign national should be able to be the president of the United States?
No.
Do you think somebody under the age of 20 should be able to be the president of the United States?
I have mixed feelings on this one. No, I don't think they should. Just like I don't think that someone under the age of 20 should be able to join the military. I think the legal age of adulthood should be bumped up to 26.
Okay, give me an example of a person that has more value than you as a human being. Disregarding your relation to them, their relation to you, anything like that.
The, no human being has more value than me. Some human beings have more value with a monetary price on them related to their value. So there's a money currency thing that's separate from that of a human being. A human being is a human being, but then with jobs, some human beings have a value placed on them with money, with their job value. Where if they've gone to college, then there's a value placed on that. But that's really deep, though. I won't go into that.
So you determine someone's value on their financial like their financial contribution or potential financial contribution to society.
It shouldn't be that way, but it is.
Prove that.
Well, okay, with a housewife, she makes no money, and most people don't view her as a contribution to society, because most people tell a housewife to go get a job, and that's the same thing with a teenager who's turned 18
See,
can't find a job.
you say most people would say that. I would not. So you're having this conversation with me, and I don't want to hear any arguments from popularity. I don't want to hear that because that's a fallacious argument. So uh, you're talking to me. I think that housewives are fantastic. I think that it is a beautiful thing when a mother stays home with her children to raise them and teach them how to live. Okay, so you're having this conversation with me, not with most people. Okay, so why do you have more value than your next door neighbor or vice versa?
I don't personally. I mean, I was a housewife my own self, and so being met with some really bad circumstances, things become challenging. So I don't. I did go to 2-year college. I never found a job or anything like that. So I don't place. I never placed a value on myself.
But you have value.
Well, yes, I have my value has always been, I always thought of myself as equal to everybody else as a human being. I never placed a financial burden on myself, but that's become in pop culture though in the past 20 years with the uptick of the internet.
Well, pop culture also tells us that the force exists and that people can regrow limbs. But you need to explain to me why an unborn human being has less value, because you wouldn't say that if somebody already had a born child with Down syndrome, would it be okay for them to unalive that child due to the financial burden that that child places on the parents?
No, not if it's alive. No. I mean,
But the fetus, the embryo, the zygote, whatever, is alive.
yeah. Well, the thing, we're in a sad state right now because with inflation and people losing jobs, not that's the choice. That's what the choice people are making is a abortion. We can say abortion on your channel, right? Or do you use another
Yeah,
word?
that's fine.
Okay, so abortion is a choice that people are making because of the fact they know they can't afford to take care of kids. And so some people might come up with an alternative story to make it sound worse than what it is to justify an abortion.
Wait, if
And
if if poor people get abortions because you say that poor people get abortions because they know they can't afford kids, then why do poor people have the most kids?
just another reason why they have kids is because women, the only way women can get welfare is to have a child right now, and this is a sad state of truth. If you don't have a child, you're not going to get placed in a house, you're going to be left homeless. So when you get divorced, you're left homeless.
So then we should have kids. We shouldn't get abortions so that people can get houses.
Correct. So the wife,
So
the
you
ex-wife,
should so you're
you're
against
gonna
abortion.
listen, you're gonna have to have, she's gonna have to have a kid for her, for the man, for her ex-husband, a kid for herself, and keep having kids periodically every few years up until she retires, so the husband and her can have a kid, so you can live someplace. Otherwise, people can't survive because you're not going to get help unless you have a kid or you have someone who is has a birth defect. So the only way to actually get assistance from the government is to have a kid.
Okay,
That's the only thing.
so you wouldn't unalive a person who is born that has Down syndrome. So why would you be okay with unaliving a unborn person who might have Down syndrome, but also might not have Down syndrome?
My preference is to not do that, actually, because the thing is I didn't, I have kids myself, and
This
I
goes
didn't.
so just so you're clear, this goes against everything that you have said to me so far.
What does?
You're now saying that your preference is to not have the
It
abortion.
it always has been, but the pro-choice is for other people. So the pro-choice is for other people, that it's not my business, it's not the government's business. So that's where I land with that, is because it's a tough decision. And the baby that I had was considered a late term abortion.
Okay, so this is a human rights issue. So as long as it doesn't affect you or your family, you don't care what happens.
It's not my business. It's not my business. It's not my business. It's not. It shouldn't have ever been politicized, but it is. So abortion is politicized and weaponized against the families, and it should never have been that way, but it is, unfortunately. And I think it's family planning. It's a hard decision. It should be left up to the individual families, where they
Hmm.
shouldn't feel like they have to be public about it.
Okay, so were you or your family affected by the Holocaust?
Not immediate. No, all of us were too old. We were too older from that, but we did have ancestors who came from Germany or from Europe to the United States in that way.
Okay, okay. Was the Holocaust a violation of human rights?
Absolutely, yes.
But you can't say anything against it because you and your immediate family were not affected.
Oh, absolutely. I can say something against it. Yes, because I lived in
So
Germany.
you can say something against it even though you and your immediate family were not affected by the Holocaust.
I absolutely. Well, we've had a Holocaust inside of the United
No,
States too.
you know which one I'm talking about. I'm talking about the
Oh,
one
the
in Germany in the 1930s and 40s.
Absolutely, I will say something against that because that was against religion.
Okay,
And
but
so,
your religion, was it your religion?
um,
You can say no.
no, it wasn't I didn't have a religion.
Okay. Okay. So we've established that in at least some cases you can speak out against violations of human rights even if it doesn't affect you or your immediate family. So
Correct.
this contradicts your earlier assertion that you should not have an opinion on other people committing human rights violations by getting abortions.
Well, I don't want to.
Because
Uh,
it was Germany's choice to conduct the Holocaust, right? So it's
well,
their choice.
the thing with abortion is, if people have enough money to live and survive, that will resolve itself, and people will have families. They'll be able to take care of their kids, but right now, when people can't afford to take care of their kids monetarily, then abortion is the alternative. If
Then
people have
why
money,
does the upper class have the fewest kids then?
probably I don't probably so they can travel the most. I mean, you're onto something there. Or they have abortions and they don't tell anybody.
Right. So you're saying that if people have the money, they're more able to have kids,
Yes.
then why don't they?
Because
Because they want to travel, right?
yeah, the rich people travel all the time, and so if you'll notice that the people who have the least amount of kids are the ones who are able to travel the most, and they opt to not have children, and they have the jobs where they can do traveling all the time.
Here's the thing. Did you know that there are twice as many people on the adoption waiting list as there are number of abortions in the United States every single year?
No, but I didn't know that. I had no idea, but I know adoption is very expensive. Isn't it like $50,000 or something like that?
Yeah, but I would tend to think that the people who are on the waiting list can afford it. So if your dilemma with have like me saying it's not okay to abort a child that may have Down syndrome, why not just give the child up for adoption?
Because I think that they would feel guilty knowing that that child was still alive and it's their child, and eventually they're going to feel guilty. They want to have a control over it instead of someone else telling them what to feel.
Well, I'll leave you with this, and then I'm going to see if anybody else wants to request.
Okay.
What is it better to feel guilty about giving up your child or to be guilty of unaliving them.
It's better for the parent to make that decision than for anybody else to tell them how they should be feeling, because it's going to be difficult no matter what direction they go. It's going
Okay,
to be a
then don't condemn the Germans from 1930s
I
and
never,
40s
I
because it
actually,
was their choice.
it was their choice to eliminate the Jewish people.
Yep,
Some people have said though that Hitler was not even German, that he
he
was
was
from,
Austrian, but
oh,
that's
Austrian.
beside the point.
He could have been from Africa too. He could
Dude,
have been
that is
Muhammad.
totally irrelevant. I never brought him up. You did.
Yes, I did.
Okay, I'm gonna see if somebody else wants to talk.
Alrighty, thank you for the conversation. Have a nice day.
You too, thanks. Wow. Wow.